Hello, I'm Nathan Hull. I am the Digital Product Development Director at Penguin Random House. We're going to discuss, today's panel is really going to be in a kind of conversational chat format, no presentations, and we're going to start touching on the world of multi-platform IP. We've got a distinguished panel. Tom Dolan to my left, Rebecca Denton further on, Michael Goldsmith, and Adrian Hon. I'm not really going to talk very much. Just in context, multi-platform can mean a multitude of things. So multi-platform IP, it might mean convergent media. It might mean telling stories in a multitude of different ways. It might mean how we use the media at our disposal to market products and tell stories in different ways as well. And at Penguin, we started making some inroads in this. We do have TV shows on air, particularly from the kids space. We are fortunate enough as one of the publishers to actually represent some broad IP ourselves, whether that be the likes of Peter Rabbit, The Snowman, Topsy and Tim from the kids space, or things like the Good Pub Guide on the Random House adult side of things. So we started making some inroads. And our CEO this morning, Tom, has been talking about other things, kind of slightly more disparate in these worlds, but things like ticketing and how that can be important in how we represent our authors and their works as well. So enough from me. I'm just going to ask our panel to do a brief introduction each as we move along, and then we're going to get chatting. And then if we have time, we're going to keep a keen eye on that clock for 1:10. We're going to open the floor to some questions as well. Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Dolan. I'm one of the old men of British new media with the emphasis on old. I've worked mainly in broadcasting, so I've worked at the BBC, MTV and ITV. I've done work for Channel 5 and I've been a consultant to Channel 4. I've also done education. There's pretty much nothing I haven't done other than news or sport, but then as somebody who's into computers, then sport's obviously going to be something I'm going to avoid like the plague anyway. My time my last big role was at ITV, where I was the Multiplatform Commissioner for Entertainment, looking after brands like The X Factor, Dancing on Ice, and The Only Way is Essex, using social media for them, and launching a bunch of their play-along and second screen apps. So I'll be able to expand on some of that later on, but let's get on to the other people.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I come from TV background, mostly. Actually, radio, the very beginning, but we won't go back that far. So TV, 7 years at Cartoon Network, working across multi-platform IP. And then I moved to Zodiac, where I did some BBC and ITV dramas, notably most probably Being Human, which has a big multi-platform heritage attached to it. And I was delighted and lucky enough to be able to work with a very talented team on that. And now I have sold my soul to advertising.
That's it. And on that bombshell, my name is Mike Goldsmith. I'm strategic lead for delivering Future's specialist content. Yes, I am reading off a screen, and brands onto mobile device. Future Publishing is predominantly a specialist media content provider. We make magazines, websites, digital editions. There's quite a lot of reasons why I'm here. Time is tight. 2. Future is the UK's leading iPad publisher. We use our own software solution, and we published all our magazines on Apple's Newsstand initiative for day one. That was back in October 2011. We sold in excess of 5 million digital editions in the last year. We have about 23% market share, and we published T3, which is the UK's leading iPad magazine. We also publish for partners, including Jamie Oliver and Peppa Pig, which is a line, if you want to draw that. Bizarre, isn't it? And the second reason, like book publishing, Future is undergoing a transition from print to digital. Magazine newsstand, whether that's Smith's, Tesco's, or the corner store, is massively challenging, yet still profitable. But we know we need to move to a new world where the business models aren't obvious, different thinking, and things change all the time, every day, based on technology, taste, audience behaviour, working with people like Apple and Google. So we're very much similar to, I think, a lot of people in this room.
Hello, I'm Adrian Hon. I run a company called Six A Start. We're founded back in 2007, mostly as a digital agency. So we did a lot of work for publishers like Penguin, and Paddy Macmillan won lots of awards, which was nice. Also, people like the BBC, Disney Imagineering, Microsoft, Death Cab for Cutie. In the last 3 years, we made a transition to just doing our own IP and making and self-publishing our own games on smartphones. So our big thing that some of you might have heard of is a story-driven health and fitness game called Zombies Run, where you physically run in the real world. I mean, not like sitting on a sofa pretending to run, but actually physically running, while we put you in a post-apocalyptic landscape, and you have to run, or sprint, or jog, or walk away from the zombies. And it's been very successful. It sold 800,000 copies. What makes it relevant, perhaps, to today is that it was co-created and written by Naomi Alderman, who is a award-winning writer, an author, and it's a very story-driven experience. We've even had Margaret Atwood as a guest writer, and she starred as the last surviving Canadian stuck in the CN Tower. So she's got a good voice for radio.
All right, so thank you. So as you can see, we've got a broad set of areas of storytelling covered here. Some of them may feel quite abstract to book publishers, but I think one of the points of this panel is to try and get across how they don't necessarily have to be, and how everyone can start making their first formative steps, if you aren't already, into some of these other worlds. So I'm going to start with you, Adrian, because that's interesting to me. We're about to publish our first game as well, and I'm very aware of the challenges we face with that. So you touched on the fact that Naomi, an award-winning author, is at the heart of this. Can you just explain a little bit more about what's called upon with an author, and actually sitting down with them and start talking about a game, and then maybe reining it back into publishing as most people in the room would understand it? Any kind of complications you've come about, coming from a book perspective, maybe?
Sure. One of the important things for us is that a lot of people who make games, a lot of people who make apps really underestimate the power of storytelling. If you look at a lot of the popular things out there, they don't really have stories. They might have settings, or they might have characters, but they don't have stories. And that's led to this weird perception that it's just not useful having a story, let alone having an author or a storyteller involved in the creation of these things. But we think differently, and the way we worked with Naomi on this particular project is, she was there right from the very start. We didn't think, we want to make a running game and we'll just go and design it, and then we'll go and hire some writer to go and work on it. She was there right at the start. She came up with the idea with us. And the story and the characters and the world that she developed really informed the design of the game. And I can't really overestimate that she was there talking to our developers, and that meant that we had to make some decisions with the technology and with the design that made our lives harder, to be honest. But if you go and talk to the people who play the game, they play it because it's a really fun game, but they play it because they want to find out what happens next. That's the power of what we've been able to make, and I think that the other thing that I would add also is that I think that there's this strange perception that authors are not really interested in doing digital stuff. All the authors I've talked to are really fascinated by it. They want to know what's going on with games, what's going on with smartphones, and I think if there's an opportunity for them to be involved, then they'll take it.
It's also, Adrian, it's also worth pointing out that, I think the reason why some people avoid narrative is because it's just a bit hard.
It is, yeah.
And it's kind of, I can do code, so I'm going to concentrate on the code bit. And I think as we move more and more towards kind of where technology rather than editorial people are making some of the decisions about how the money gets divvied up, it's easy for them to retreat back into that. Well, those are just assets. We can monetize that. Those are things we can do.
It's much easier to just go and clone Candy Crush.
Yeah,
to try and make a really good story.
But if you look at something like Thomas Was Alone, that's a kind of it's quite a simple kind of platformy game, but it's the thing that makes it magical is the story layer over the top.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that people here should check out if they've got time is Device 6, which is a fascinating iPhone and iPad game. Apple love it. They featured it like 3 times, which is ridiculous. It sold 200,000 copies, which would be respectable for any original new book, and I think it sold pots of money basically.
So Tom, your background, or some of your background, because it's quite diverse, on the TV side, which
Yeah.
is, again, probably quite an abstract area of storytelling to many people in the book side. Don't want to cast everyone with the same thing, but...
It doesn't feel it at the time.
No.
It feels like, at the time.
Can you give us some kind of, what learnings can you convey to people with working on things like Only Way is Essex, X Factor, these kind of things?
Okay, so I think the key thing is to be really, really true to what the thing actually is. Try to get back to the kind of the core of the proposition. So when we were, part of my job was to say no to lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of ideas. Just because we could do something didn't mean it actually added any value or any emotional resonance or increased the experience of doing things a lot. I had loads of apps for shows that were pitched to me where it's like, it's great, but you're just doing an app because you could do an app. And I think it's that boundary where people think that there's the blurring between what's multi-platform storytelling or multi-platform IP and what's marketing. And I think multi-platform storytelling or IP, it's an experience of its own that can sometimes have marketing side effects. And so we're always looking at the kind of what's the sort of the truth in this that we can try and extend. So we take something like a show like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and say, what's this actually about? It's about being really, really cold and hungry and desperate for food and hoping that your friends are going to get you through. So how can we look at the core of that? We also mined the social media we had for some of our shows. And we were looking for what we could do with The Only Way is Essex, which was kind of like quite a big social media show. So it's got like an audience of about 1 million, but we were regularly getting kind of 30 tweets a second while it was on air. And we were saying, well, what can we do with this? So we had a big long list of all the things we could do, of kind of creating virtual worlds and whatever. And there was this little moment where we suddenly spotted a set of tweets just as one of the series finished, where it's like, what am I going to do with my Wednesday and Sunday nights now? And we kind of drilled back, and it was like, actually, that's a real user need. That's a behaviour and a user need we can capitalise on to create a way of expanding the story world in a way they want us to go. So it's always about trying to, what's the thing we're building and how's it going to feed back? So and we kind of look at it as the story is kind of like, what's the beginning, the middle and the end? What's the call to action going to be? Why should I do this? What's the fun thing I can actually do? And then how's that going to come back to be some sort of payoff or thing that I'm going to want to tell my friends about? So if there's no value add, if there's no emotional transfer, if there's no kind of reason to do it, then you're just wasting money, I think. So keep chiseling away and binning ideas till you find that kind of thing.
Rebecca, coming largely from the kids space, where I would say, in my experience within Penguin, that's where we've had the most opportunity, I guess, with historic IP that we've already owned, so it's there to kind of pursue. Can you carry on from where Tom left off there, maybe? And then I know more recently you've started moving into advertising worlds and these kind of things, which are kind of, there may be a dirty word in publishing, but I think there's a lot people can start to learn in that kind of space as well.
So what?
Kids TV in particular, start there.
So kids TV, yeah. I mean, kids are great because kids adapt quickly. They're ahead of us. They're constantly pushing all their own needs, whereas adults are a little bit more lax. So you can really see a lot of multi-platform IP being driven directly out of kids, and kids TV in particular has done some really interesting and fun things, particularly in publishing, and kids publishing is pretty ahead of the game as well in the digital space. But when I was at Cartoon Network, we worked a lot with the US creators, so we had very little to do with the originators of the stories, and we had to take the IP and find a way to make it relevant across different platforms. It was very kind of basic run-of-the-mill reversioning for online or repurposing, and we didn't have access to the original writers, and so I have a whole host of Flash games in my bank of experience and all sorts of things like that. But what happened, I was really lucky at Cartoon Network. They opened up a European development studio, and out of that studio came a show called The Amazing World of Gumball, and it was the first time that Cartoon Network in Europe had a really incredible program that was being made in London, round the corner from us, with all the writers and all the creators there. And those guys were young, and they were really excited, and they were isolated from the rest of the Cartoon Network machine, and we were able to go in right there at the beginning and start talking to them about what should we do online, and what should we do with games, and how should we bring this to life in different areas. And the creator, Ben Bockley, just had such a great appetite for exploration with his story, and he couldn't wait to tell you the different ways that these characters would interact in different spaces and extend that world out. And, we did some things well, and I think we did some things badly, but the experience was unlike anything I'd ever had working with multi-platform IP, because I was right there at the front of it. And when I finished the project and left Cartoon Network, I was like, that's it, I'm never working any other way again, because it was just amazing. And I've never worked that way since. But it's a real treasure when you can get in there and really be a part of that. And I've forgotten the question.
I think it's worth saying, one of my first questions I always had whenever anybody approached me at ITV about, can I do an app, is, have you already recorded it? And the answer was yes. It's then, well, why would I do an app for it? Why would I try and make your show interactive if you've already put it in the can? If I can't actually shape it in some way, what's the point?
Well, I guess this comes down, like, the fundamental question that I've been thinking about as we kind of, when we all met outside as well, is a lot of the times in a book publishing house, people come to me with the idea, which generally is a book, and say, what can we do digitally with this? And the most frustrating thing is with me, I'd rather have that conversation long before the book's acquired, or before the author's written it, or all these kind of things. So I imagine one of the fundamental questions that maybe I'm just going to open to anyone who wants to take it is, as book publishers, as the starting point, for anyone in the room thinking about tackling multiple IP, where would they start?
I can't believe they're not.
There'll be some that have, some that aren't.
When you go to a lot of conferences, especially from a magazine point of view, I'm going to back away from that. One of the key phrases, 360-degree commissioning. And that's quite easy for a magazine publisher, especially if you make a magazine like Total Film, where we produce a print title, we have a website. Some of our magazines do covered discs. We're used to commissioning out and capturing all that information at the time of commission. You're going to interview a movie star, you better film it, you better record it. I'd want the journalist to tweet about it, go on to any other form of social media, keep going. That will fuel the YouTube channel, all of the things that you've heard about today. And that's a process that, almost echoing what Adrian's saying, that the editors were keen to do because they understood that audience. And so if you can bring, at that point of commissioning, it might not be the right phrase here, but if you can bring the authors into it, they've got the wealth of content out there, and they've got the relationships with the audience. And sure as hell you might want to go out and ask them what they want, if you're going to be expecting to reach them on other channels, whether you're monetizing them or not.
I think doing this well also requires the rights holders or the publishers to really kind of step back and let, if you want to make an app, let the app developers show what they're capable of. If you want to make film, let the filmmakers show what they're capable of. Probably one of the most successful multi-platform IPs I've seen in the last few years has been The Walking Dead. It started out as a comic, which was very successful, but most people didn't know what The Walking Dead was, to be honest. Of course, it became a TV show, very successful, and then became an incredibly successful game, and not just a game that sold. I think it's grossed over $50 million, which is extraordinary. But it's actually a really, really good game. It was Game of the Year in 2012, I think, 2013. So critically acclaimed, making huge amounts of money. There's no reason why you couldn't do such a good game for other properties, for something like Doctor Who, for something like James Bond. There's no reason why that's not possible. There are game developers out there who are prepared to do that. And except for the problem that often these things get seen as add-ons. That's why we've never had a good Doctor Who game, because the BBC doesn't take it seriously, and they don't think it's possible to tell a good story in that medium. Whereas with The Walking Dead, I think what happened there is that the author and that the publishers trusted the developers to do a good job and to write within that universe. and to tell a different story, but a related story. And not only did everyone make lots of money, but of course it went and boosted, the whole thing was synergistic, it boosted the audience for every single one of the different media that The Walking Dead was across.
So you're saying it was part of the creative process rather than just flogged at the licensing show?
Yeah.
As a kart racer or something else?
Each of the elements of the Walking Dead franchise play really well to the strengths of the audience in their area. That's what they do so well. The comic is dark as hell and amazing, and it's a really delightful moment in our house when the new one comes out. We watch the series as well, which is softer. It's gentler, it's more character driven, I suppose, because it's TV. There's a lot of lingering shots you don't have in a comic. And then the game is dirty old zombie killing, and that's what they do so well, The Walking Dead. They really approach each of the different areas, and they target the audience in the environment that they're happy in, and they target them well. And I follow The Walking Dead across all those different platforms because I love the heart of the IP, really, and I love all the different iterations of it.
And actually, Game of Thrones, they're turning into a video game, and it's going to be made by the same people who made The Walking Dead. So these are the go-to guys. Telltale Games, they're the go-to guys for doing good story games. Although I think they've got their plates full at the moment. They're doing too many games, so we'll see what happens.
So I think we're pressed for time, so I will open the floor for just a couple more questions if the mics can be ready. Kind of wrapping up, there's a few fundamental themes for me, but jump in if you thought of any others, is thinking about the kind of the creative at the source as early as possible. Maybe there's room for the publishers, traditional book publishers, to move a lot more into these spaces. They probably need to think a little bit more about diversity in skill sets within their established kind of buildings and the way they've worked. We haven't had time to touch on all kinds of things around rights restrictions and the way that traditional book deals may need to be rethought in order to do a lot of this great creative storytelling as we're talking about it today. And then really, I guess the considerations about which parts we are best off doing ourselves in-house, depending on your size and your skill sets and your capabilities, and where your skills as a publisher and seeking new talent may be actually trying to find those right partners, be they games developers or the right TV partners to license with, etc., to then kind of exploit those rights and tell those stories in a different way.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that always interests me about publishers is you guys have all the great stories, you have them at your fingertips, and my industry is ploughing through your catalogues to steal those stories and put them on TV. And the question is, at what point do you start owning that, and at what point does that start becoming your business? Because this is, for my mind, where great stories begin, and the power is definitely in publishing hands, and it's yours for the taking, really.
I'd love to leave it on that point in particular. We're going to stop there. There probably got room for 2 questions. Come on. Can't believe that. I shouldn't have killed it on that point, should I?
So one of us behind this table isn't wearing any trousers. You have to work out which one it is.
I'll happily fill a bit of space with just one kind of observation, that Future, we make a lot, we're quite a techie company. We have our own platform, and isn't that great? We can make things burst on fire and spin round and lots of whizzy particle effects, and that's fantastic. And that is absolutely perfect for audiences that demand it. It's all about the audience, remember, all about the reader. That could be technology or gadgets or film. If we didn't have some kind of richly interactive experience there, we'd be dropping the ball. Interactivity, massive interactivity, is not always required. Depends what your audience says, but they might just want the words. They might just want the pictures. They might just want a gorgeous reading experience where they can choose the font, the background colour, and actually not much beyond that. If you get that sorted first, because that's what you've got, and then kind of baby step away from it, you could end up at a massive online world or as a zombie running game, which is fantastic. Why they didn't do being Hume. But you could do all that, but make sure that strong base at the beginning, your proper business model, you get that sorted, and then you can fund those baby steps away. So just get out there and do it, I think.
I think make sure as well, it's making sure you've actually got some way of measuring that you're answering a user's problem, that you're being interesting. The moment you go digital, you're competing with the rest of the internet. And so you've got a responsibility with the money you spend to be more interesting than that. So making sure you've got continuous feedback is really important.
Yeah, and I think one of the best feedbacks is how much money you're making. We've received so much money from platforms and from publishers, and my company's done some really interesting projects. I'm not convinced that the return of investment has been worth it, to be totally honest. And I think that that's true of a lot of digital apps that, whether they're free or whether they're being sold, they can be very expensive to make. I know for a fact that they aren't making a lot of money, a lot of them. If you're making an app for a book, or you're making an app that's a story and it's not making money, then you need to rethink what you're doing. You can't keep on pouring money down this hole forever. Even though that's what you think you should be doing, making apps. There are people out there who and also don't believe it when people say that you can't make money from apps and you have to go and make Candy Crush, you have to go and make Clash of Clans. It's not true. You can go higher. We were just talking about this game, Monument Valley. How much does it cost? Like $5? It's not a cheap game.
£2.49.
£2.49. And it's going to sell hundreds of thousands of units. It is possible to do this if you make something high quality, and I think that's a place where publishers can be.
But I think if you just want to create a quick marketing splash, then don't get into this particular world. Because I think copying other people's ideas, saying, oh, we'll have one of those as well, it's not interesting. Okay. It's like having a really overwritten character who runs into your book, goes, look at this, and then just leaves immediately afterwards. And goes, what happened there?
And actually, the data that you get back from that will be that one initiative that failed.
Yeah.
And someone will turn around and say, well, we shouldn't bother doing games, or we shouldn't bother doing second screen experiences or something. No, we shouldn't bother doing that.
Yeah.
And that, what Tom just described.
Great. Well,
They're
thank
all
you.
very hungry, aren't you? Yes.
If it helps, the slot after lunch.
I'm going to re-emphasize the line, we have the stories and we have the characters, but let's not be complacent. If there's room to pursue some of the stuff these guys have discussed today, then I'll wholly encourage everyone to not be complacent, get back to your offices and tell them what's what. Thank you.